say what a pleasure it is to be back in Toronto. My wife is Canadian. She was born, I know, it's good. They're very nice Canadians, she keeps telling me. But it's one of those things where I've got to know this place by passing through. Every summer we go, as a family vacation, we go to the Muskokas and have a wonderful time. So it's very nice to be back. When I put this in my planner, I didn't realise it would be one of two highlights of my week. Michael actually approached me last year in Montreal about this time and wanted me to come up here, and I was delighted to do so. But it's been quite a busy time. But my life has been one of great sort of busyness and activity for quite a long time, and particularly since I took over Althorp. You know, I used to go there with my sister Diana and my other siblings when my grandparents were alive, and we were always slightly terrified of going there because my grandfather was extremely fierce. Behind his back he was known as Jolly Jack because he never smiled. And we were always told, don't touch the furniture, don't do anything, don't really exist. And we really obeyed those rules. But I suppose I got an appreciation of the house and how important the collection was then. But only as a slightly petrified small boy. But it was about 15 years ago that I had to look at this collection through new eyes. I had actually, as a little boy, earned pocket money showing tourists around, because for 60 days a year the house has to be, by English law, has to be open to the public so they can come and enjoy it. So I knew a little bit about it. But then I was approached by two totally random people, an Englishman and an American. And they had read an article in quite an obscure, upscale magazine in England called Apollo, which said that the furniture collection at Althorp is one of the finest in the world. Now, I've always been fascinated by history, but to me, I always found it easier to connect with the portraits in the house because they were of somebody, usually of a man at his most powerful or a woman at her most beautiful, and they were a much easier story to connect to. So I was incredibly grateful when I discovered, among the many, many volumes in the library at Althorp, these two standout, massive albums. And they were photographs of every single item in the house taken by my grandfather. And he was a great, well, he was really he would have been an academic if he hadn't been an Earl. And he had gone into the family archives, and so we know on every single piece of furniture in Althorp, we know who commissioned it, who made it, how much it cost, if it's ever been repaired, and which rooms it's been in, because he researched all of that. So it's a wonderful background of knowledge and romance to each of these pieces. And I don't know any other furniture collection in private hands in England that has that, so it's an incredibly lucky thing to have at our beck and call. And anyway, these people, these agents, managed to bring forward a company who wanted to make reproduction pieces. I wasn't sure about them, actually, and said no, because it's such a precious thing to hand over to another party. But as Michael mentioned in the introduction, I was then lucky enough to fall into the hands of Theodore Alexander, a wonderful firm set up by a very eccentric Englishman. And he approached me, and he said that it was his wish to go out on a bit of a high. I mean, Theodore Alexander is already at a very high level, but to have a premium range, and he wanted to call it Althorp Living History. And I thought, well, that's wonderful. You know, a man of this talent and vision, that he wants to do this. And he said, could we look around a bit? And I said, of course. And to be honest, I slightly forgot about them. And 3 days later, they reappeared, him and his creative person. And they reappeared with 10,000 images on their camera of things they wanted to work with. And we've been doing this for 14 years now, and I think about 700 pieces of Althorp have been made. So you have a snapshot of them here. There's about 50 pieces, I think, in this particular showroom at Kennedy's. But it's been a fantastic arrangement, really, because all of the money that comes out of this range, that comes back to my family, gets put straight back into Althorp. And the house itself is 90 rooms. It's 100,000 square feet, I think. And you'll see it, actually. There's a picture of it through that wall on the right, as you go through, on what it looked like before its restoration. So my father sadly died very young, 26 years ago. And towards the end of his life, the man in charge of maintenance went to see him and said, the roof's had it. And my father said, well, I think I'll leave that to Charles. All So I got that. Little did I know that I'd also get the entire outside of the house as well, because the original house, it's such an interesting thing how fashions change. It was built in 1508 in a Tudor red brick style, very pretty. But in the 1780s, there was a bit of a tyrant who came onto the English country house scene called Capability Brown. And he laid out a lot of these great parks you see when you tour England. And he decreed that anyone who had red brick was frankly very vulgar. And he said that if you have red brick, it puts the whole valley into a fever. So we, obeying the fashion diktat at the time, we put on a centimetre thick limestone tile. So when you look at Althorp now, there's still this beautiful red brick house underneath. Well, unfortunately, about 12 years ago, those started to come off the red brick, so I had to restore that. And I was thinking earlier today, I've also done the rewiring, replumbing, and all the heating and everything. And that's just in the last 26 years. So this furniture has been very important in helping to look after the house. And I like to see a sort of holistic circle, really, because for 500 years the house has looked after the furniture, and now the furniture looks after the house. It seems fair. And so what I've done over the past few years, really, is have the joy of going and seeing evenings such as this, where people have collected pieces and are looking for other pieces. And it's been such an interesting time to have what is a traditional-looking setup, because, of course, as you all know, the predominant taste over the last 14 years or so has been contemporary. But the great thing is, I think what's been the hallmark of this collection has been the fact that every piece is very classical. So it blends into anything. Even if you live in a very contemporary space, if you have a piece of really good-looking classical furniture such as this, I think it gives a room spine. You know, there's so much flimsiness in our what we've been told to appreciate as good taste, and I like to see just the odd piece of something serious to bring everything else together. And when I look at these pieces, I think, how have they survived in one family's hands for so long? All of you have been in the position at some point in your family life of moving into a house, or maybe an elder relative dying, and then the furniture coming down the line, as it were. And so what do? You keep the piece you really like, and you get rid of the rest. Well, these are the pieces that have withstood that generational cut, as it were, for 500 years, some of them for 400, 300, but they have gone down the line as the piece that people wanted to keep and look after and pass on. And I have to say, you know, when I go around all the world, I mean, these pieces are in China. There's 27 stores in China carrying Althorp. They're in India. They're everywhere. What's so nice for me is to think that, in a way, it's a salute to, hopefully, some ancestral good taste, that they got these things right. And I just thought I'd point out a couple of pieces which are my favourites. Going from actually the quite modest end of things, the beautiful butterfly table there, which I love. Because I see a lot of these pieces as perhaps more masculine, but this to me is the height of femininity. And it's connected to a really beautiful Spencer ancestress called Charlotte Spencer, who lived in the 19th century. And her great passion was embroidery and needlework. And this is it's put on a mount to make it into a side table now. But as you can see, if you open up the butterfly wings, it's where she used to store her needles and embroidery. And I love that connection. And in fact, the beautiful workmanship, even on a relatively humble piece such as that, you know, they do use the real, authentic woods, and it's all handcrafted. And then this piece, which I know some of you at the back, but you'll see it later, this absolutely beautiful chair, which was a set of these were always in my grandmother's sitting room when we used to visit her in the 60s and 70s. And she was this fantastic presence in the house, a very kind and charitable woman. And in fact, the local hospice in England is named for her. And it just reminds me of her elegance and her charm, and it's just such an exquisitely beautiful piece. And what I love, people say to me, how authentic are these pieces to the original? And really, they're very authentic. The only real changes we've made is that we've made them more comfortable. Because, frankly, we're not prepared to suffer on furniture anymore. I think in the old days, you know, people would have been perched on the edge of very hard sofas in a ball dress, and that was fine. But now we like to relax and enjoy them. And then I look at other important pieces in the collection, and this, to me, is a very fun desk. It does all the function of a normal desk, but you can open up almost any part of it. If I could just ask to move up. You can open up these there, and you open up little compartments, and it reminds me of how my father used to have a little black penny from a very, very long time ago. There are about 80 drawers in this piece, and he would hide it and then say, if you guess the right drawer, you can keep it. Well, he's a man who knew odds quite well. We never won that coin. But I love the sort of playful nature of a piece like that. And then the seriousness of this, which is, it's a copy of one of the pieces from our library at Althorp. And in a library, I think it's very important, I mean, not everyone has a library, I do appreciate it, but if you have a library, it's important to break up the look of all those leather spines with something more intricate. So this is particularly made to show off your favourite little pieces, whether they be silver, as in here, or the egg, or whatever, but just to show off little pieces that mean a lot to you. And I think, you know, when I look around the room, sometimes I think, my goodness, a madman's got into my house and rearranged the furniture. But it is a wonderful thing to see all these pieces out here tonight. And I'm particularly grateful to all of you for coming here. And also for Kennedy Galleries for putting on such a splendid evening. What a wonderful hospitality they're showing us tonight. But all in all, I'm here for one evening only. I'm flying to London tonight. But I'm here until about 8:30, and I'm absolutely your beck and call. If you have any questions about any of the pieces, I'd be delighted to talk to you about them and to pick my grandfather's brain as I do. But this is a house that still exists. It's very, very rare for a historic house in England to still be in private hands. Basically what's happened is after the war, nobody could afford them to keep them. My grandfather was paying 98% income tax in the 60s and 70s. But he was never going to surrender these pieces, and he kept them going. And it's a wonderful thing to see them still being relevant, first originally in the private house, but now as what I would consider instant heirlooms now. And it still is a home in many ways. You can't live there in a traditional family way, but we still go there to enjoy it. The fact that it was designed as a place of entertainment. We have this massive staircase at the centre of the house in a room called the saloon. And my children are the 19th generation to go down it on tea trays at high speed. And I think these are the traditions that we must fight for, and which make a house a home. And so it's a real pleasure for me to share Althorp living history with you tonight. And I'd like to thank you all for coming. Thank you.